Good afternoon. Today we will start our next unit, sampling and sampling designing. So sampling and sampling design is most useful in the research work. So what are the learning objective of these topics, today topics? Discuss sample and population, describe different methods of sampling design, how to prepare sampling design. So before you discuss about your sampling and sampling design, first you want to know some term, that is what is sample and what is population. Sample is a subset of larger population. Larger population means what? It is called the subset. Suppose that you want to select 10 students out of 60 students in your class. So that means sample is 10 and 60 is the population. Sometime population is known or sometime population is not known. This is called the infinite population. At that time also we can collect the sample or we can select the sample. In infinite population, suppose that we have to collect the information from state of Odisha. This is a finite population. But if the question is that when you are collecting the sample, those students are securing more than 90% in the class test. So at that time, what happened? Now we have to find out that how many students are selecting but securing more than 90% marks. So this is we have to calculate this. So we can say this is infinite. If you calculate, this is finite. If you are not calculating the number of students who are securing 90% marks, so this is you can say infinite. So sample means it is a subset. Some sample we have to collect from the more population. So similarly, what is population now? The total number of samples is called population, or big group is called the population. So that means totality of the samples is called the population. Our sample we cannot say 10 or 20 or 30, but population, from the population we have to collect the sample. The total number of samples is called the population. A population is a infinite group, or we can say sometimes it is a finite group, it is a population. Now, if this is sample and this is the population, then how can you select a sample? This is very, very important. Because why it is important? Now, when you want to do your research work, some example I am giving that. So we have to select sample for the B school for development of the quality education. So at that time we have to collect the sample from the institute, either category A or category B or category C. So in this category A, what will be by how to collect your sample? So for that cases, this procedure we have to use. What is the procedure? Now first we have to define that who are the target audience or target population. Target population means if you want to develop a quality education in the business school or B school, so at that time the target populations are one is student, one is faculty, and another is principal director. They are the target population, right? So now, if they are the target population, so how can we take the sample? So for that cases, what happen? Now we have to preparing the sampling frame. So what is sampling frame? Again, we are discussing one by one. Suppose first, target population means relevant population or operational defined. Relevant population means what happen? Now who are the required sample, or who are the required objects, or who are the target audience, we can say that. Suppose B school, one student, one faculty, and one principal director, they are the relevant population. Or operationally, we are defined who are the eligible for data collection or who are the target group or target audience. So in that case, what happens? Suppose that we are collecting the sample from the student, from the faculty, and from the director, principal. So now, how can you collect the data from the student, from the faculty members, and from the director, principal, or head of the institution? So for that cases, what happened? We need the sampling frame, a list of elements from which the sample may be drawn, working population, or manually database market trends. So that time what happened? Now first you have to find out that if we are collecting from the student, which type of student we have to collect the data. That means what happened? Now every institute, when we are collecting data from the student, which type of student is required for our study. So we can see that one is higher level students, one is middle level students, one is poor level students. If you are going for higher level students, so what is the criteria for the higher level students? Those students are securing more than 90% mark. These are higher level. Those students are securing 70 to 90% mark. These are average. Those are securing 50 to 60% marks. They are poor. So which type of students is required, or which type of students data is required for your study? So for that cases, what happened? Now we have to prepare the sampling frame. One is best category, one is middle category, and one is average category. So in category, each category you can say that this is one frame. First frame is student. Then after frame, which type of students from where we have to collect the data. Similarly, faculty. One faculty, this is a frame. How to prepare frame the faculty members? Now, first you have to find out that three levels. One is professor levels, one is associate professor levels, one is assistant professor levels. If we are collecting the data from the professor level, how many data we have to collect from each institution? How many data we have to collect from associate professor? How many data we have to collect from your assistant professor? So for that cases, what happened? Now we have to prepare first frame that yes, in that each institute we have to collect the five professor, or five associate professor, or five assistant professor, or three professor, five assistant associate professor, and 10 assistant professor. So accordingly, we have to prepare the frame. Similarly, principal director, every institute, one director, principal director, or maybe sometime one principal, one director is there, one vice principal is there. So one dean, according principal, you can say in same post. So you have to find out that each institute we have to collect either one or two data from the head of the institute or director or principal level. So this is called basically what is. Now before you collect the data, first you have to go for the frame. And frame is what happened. Now elements from which the sample may be drawn, or the working population, or suppose we have to send your mail. To whom we have to send the mail? Either which level? Suppose you have to want to collect the data from the industry level. Which industry you want to take the data? So how many number of population? How many number of what is the person or target audience? So we have to first calculate it and prepare a frame. So our frame is that in the senior level we have to send 100 questionnaire. In assistant manager level we have to send 200 questionnaire. In the executive level, we have to send the 500 questionnaire. So this frame first you have to prepare. Then accordingly you have to send your questionnaire. So like this, what happens now, before you select or you collect your data from the respondent, first you have to prepare a frame, and accordingly you have to send your questionnaire to the respondents and you collect the information. So in the again is that in that cases, so if this is a sampling frame, then what are the sampling unit? Sampling unit means that suppose in our previous example, so developing the quality education in the institute, so we have to collect the frame is that three frame is there. One is student, one is faculty, and one is director principal. If they are from student, how many units should be required? In your suppose Bhubaneswar, Cuttack, Bhubaneswar cases, so we can say that now we have to collect 10, to select the 10 colleges, and from that colleges, each colleges one unit. From each unit or each college, suppose that each college is one unit. Each college you have to collect 10 questionnaire from the student, 5 questionnaire from the faculty, and 2 questionnaire from the director principal. So this is unit. So groups rated for the sample, primary sampling unit (PSU), secondary sampling unit and territory sampling unit. So this is, if unit is more, again you divided it. Now suppose that you want to collect one information, one unit from suppose in your block. In your block cases, now we have to collect that how many educated, how many uneducated is there. So in your block cases, how many? Various panchayat level is there. If you can say that block is a one unit, then how what is the sub unit is the panchayat? So in panchayat also you can say that this is a sampling unit. From block you have to collect the information, but each panchayat you can say again it is unit. Suppose in your panchayat you can how can you collect the information? Now suppose in your panchayat 10 schools are there, all the people you call from the schools, then again you collect the information, and the school is now again the unit sub unit. You can say that. So unit accordingly your research work, according to your topics. So you can prepare your sampling units as well as the sampling frame. So sampling frame and sampling unit is totally depending on your requirement. That means suppose that your sample data is more, then at that time what happened, your sampling frame and sampling unit should be more. If your sample data is less, your sampling frame and sampling unit is very less. These simple things. Then is sample size. Sample size is very, very important. What are the number of sample for the research? Number of sample for the research is called the sample size. Suppose you want to collect your data. From where you have to collect data? From the as per requirement your research work. So at that time, how can you select that? What should be your sample size? So generally in your sample size, depending on your research work, and also it is depending on your population. What is population? Now your population is known, then what should be your sample size? If your sample is unknown, population is unknown, then what should be your sample size? And there are two type of statistical techniques we are using, the determination of sampling. So generally what happens, this sample size, some equation is there, some techniques is there to find out the sample size. So at that time what happened, we have to depending on your statistical formula is there also, and this statistical formula is there. But this is not recorded in here. So before you collect the information, you need the sample. What should be your sample size? Some research work we can say that my sample size should be required 100 to 150. Suppose you are doing you want to prepare suppose in your questionnaire in your research paper. So for the research paper we need 100 to 150 sample is required. That means your sample size is 150. You cannot take the more sample size because it is mentioned in your research design. When you are doing your research work, at that time you have to first find out that what should be your sample size. Suppose you are doing your research work, suppose PhD research work. So at that time also, what should be your sample size? Suppose we are taking the 500 sample size. From where you are getting the sample size? And this is, we are doing, this is the calculation is there. Population size, if not, generally what happen, if your population size is unknown, then at that time what happen, your population sample size should be more than 385. This is the normal calculation from the statistics. If your population size is unknown, then your sample size should be more than 385. If your sample size is known, accordingly you have to use the formula. According to the formula, you have to find out the sample size, and this formula or this technique is called determination of sample size. And this sample size depending on your standard deviation, mean and variance. Okay. Then, if this is the sample size, then what are the sampling? Sampling is depending on what? Sample, population, and target study population and the target population. So, the sample or sampling is depending on your three. What should be your sample? What should be your study population? And what should be your target population? Because what happened? The sampling is a technique. Sampling a technique we have to use for your research work. So when you design your research work, at that time sample techniques you have to use. Sample techniques means what happens? Suppose this is a study population, this is a target population, and sample size is known. Then how can you use these sampling techniques to collect the data? Best example is your placement. In your placement, what happens? Basically, we are using the sampling technique for the interview process. And also similarly, we can use these sampling techniques from where every researcher, they can use the sampling techniques to collect the information from the various sources. So that means in your statistically, if you are telling that now we need the study population and we do the target population, or sometimes we can say that target audience. So what are the techniques, sampling techniques we are using from your research work? And this is very, 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 very important. The first one is that generally we are using two type of sampling. One is probability sampling, one is non-probability sampling. In a probability sampling, what happened? Now it is non-zero probability for every element. If probability is zero, the chances is less. That means zero. We cannot say that we are collecting or not collecting. So what is probability? The chances. Chances should be up to 100%. So generally, what is probability means whatever this is 50-50. Success rate 50, failure rate 50. This is the probability values. And probability value always you know that 0 to 100% or 0 to 1 values, the values. And for the non-probability cases, probability of selecting any particular member is unknown. So if unknown is there, then we are using non-probability sampling. If unknown parameters is there, unknown members or the person is there unknown, we cannot say how many there. So at the time what happened, we are not using the non-probability sampling because if elements is not known, how can we find out the probability? So if element is known, then we can say this is the we can use the probability sampling. Element is not known, generally we are using the non-probability sampling. So what are the techniques for both the cases? One is probability sampling, one is non-probability sampling. So we are discussing one by one. In a non-probability sampling cases, so we are using convenience sampling, judgment sampling, water sampling, snowball sampling. Generally we are using in convenience cases. So generally what happened? Now when you are going for your marketing research or any research method, social research also. So at that time we are using two type of methods. One is qualitative methods and another is quantitative methods. So generally in qualitative methods, we are using non-probability sampling. How we are using this one? Now suppose that in any organization, suppose you are the manager of any company or any organization. An organization given the task to you that to find out that why our product is not demanded in the market last 2 years. So being a manager, what do you want to do? You have to discuss with the department. And at the cell, we discuss with the executives. Say, what is the problem actually happening in our organization that our product is not demanded by the customers last 2 years? So for that cases, what happened? Now you have to call a meeting. This is called the qualitative techniques or qualitative methods. You call a techniques, that means only the higher executives, or you can say that the director levels. So you have to start your meeting, and in this meeting you discuss what is the problem arises in your organization. So in that cases, what happened? Now if all the higher executives or the director levels, you can say that if they are failure to take the decisions, then what happened? They have to call next executives or higher authority of that organization and sitting together, and they have to discuss the matter about how we develop our demand of demand of the why the last 2 years are very less. So again, they are discussing among yourself. After that, whatever, if they are not find out any decision, then again what happened? They have to call all the employee of the organizations and go for the one conference or meeting that discussing regarding the demand of your product of your organization present and last 2 years. So generally, this type of techniques we are using. Sometimes you can say that whatever these are qualitative techniques, and at the time whatever we have to collect the opinion every jury of the organization. So sometimes what happen now higher level, executive level, and lower level employee, those are working in that organization. We have to collect the information and we have to take the decision. So these techniques, what techniques we are using? Now we are using in here sampling techniques also, how to collect the information from the executive of that organization. Higher executive we are discussing again, then lower, middle executive, then the lower executive. All you call and collect the information. So at that time what happened? We are using some techniques. What techniques are there? Now, sometimes we can say that convince somebody, we convince them and we have to collect the information and you judge the information and quarter sample is normal. The other techniques is there. So we have to use these techniques. Later we are discussing this one and you have to collect the information. Because this technique or these sampling techniques we are using to collect the information from the respondents. So first we are discussing about again. Second one is probability sampling. Similarly, the probability techniques are simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, and multi-stage sampling. In probability sampling, we are using simple random sampling. One is systematic sampling, one is stratified sampling, one is cluster sampling, one is multi-stage sampling. Details we are discussing one by one. So first we have to discuss about the non-probability sampling. This is confidence sampling. Confidence sampling, also called the haphazard or accidental sampling. The sampling procedure of obtaining the people or units that most conveniently available. So in confidence sampling, what happens? Now from where you want to collect the sample, at that time we have to find out that from where you have to collect the sample or sampling. We have used the confidence sampling procedure. So at the time we have to first see that the audience or the peoples or the persons are conveniently available. And accordingly available, then you convince them and you collect the information. Otherwise it is difficult. Because what happens? Now sometimes suppose one person they are not convinced for your research work, then they are unable to answer your questions. And sometimes what happens, you discuss with them, time you take the time. Suppose they are not he is not available. If they are convinced, you have to collect your information. If they are not, if he is not convenient or he is not available, then how can you collect the information? So further cases what happen in convenience sampling means what happen? If he is available or convenient to answer your questions, or you can meet him, then this type of sampling techniques you are using for your non-probability sampling. That means convince him and you collect the information. Judgment sampling. Judgment sampling, sometimes we can say that this is a purposive sampling. Purposive sampling means what happens? Now, individual select the sample based on his or her judgment about some appropriate characteristic required of the sample member. So the judgment sampling means generally what we are using that. Now sometimes we are discussing each other. And each other means we have to sharing of your problem of the organization, or you can say your problem of your develop the quality education or any matter. So first what happens, you have to discuss with him and you judge it. After judge it, then you have to collect the information for their solution. But in judgment sampling, whatever it is very difficult task for the researchers, because in the 5 minutes, 10 minutes or 20 minutes, if you are discussing any one person, so at that time what happens, you cannot judge appropriately of that particular person. If you want to questions, ask some questions to that person, they are maybe given the right answer or maybe given the some manipulative answer. So we cannot write things we cannot find out. So that's why what happens, this judgmental sampling is very easy and very difficult also, because sometimes what happens, you cannot collect the appropriate answer from the respondents. Quarter sampling. The quarter samplings, it is ensured that the various subgroups in the population are represented the present of sample characteristics to the exact extent that their investigator desire. It should not be confused with the satisfied sampling. Forget about this one. In quarter sampling, what happens? Now, sometimes it is very difficult to collect the information in your confidence sampling or also in the that is what is this is called the judgmental sampling. So at the time, what happens? Now you have to use some various subgroups of the populations. If subgroups of population, what you discuss 2, 3, 4, 5 like this, at the time, whatever they are discussing with them, then in the judgmental sampling, you are implementing there and you collect the information. Yes or no? And when you are collecting using the subgroups, what happens? As per their permission, you discuss with them. Directly you cannot collect the information. Yes or no? So at the time, what happens? Now before you collect your information, you have to design in right way that yes, if you are going for in this way, then maybe we are collecting the information. So that means what happens in quarter sampling, first you have to make a subgroup, because in more population it is very difficult to find out collect the information regarding convenience sampling and also judgmental sampling. So for that cases, what happen? Now you have to create the subgroups, and after that you can use this judgmental sampling and convenience sampling, and you collect the information. So this sampling techniques is called the quota sampling. Snowball sampling, this is another technique is there because what happened? Now, a variety of procedure we can implement in the sampling techniques. Initially, respondents are selected by probability methods. Suppose that what happened? Now you are selecting the subgroups by the quota sampling methods, and what happened? Now you have to select one, select two, select three. So like this, you have to first select it, then you collect the information. Information may be collected from various methods you can use it there, various method you can implement there. So initially what happened? Now first you selected the probability methods you have to use. Probability methods means what? Probability sampling method. So that is 5 methods. Later on we are discussing. One is probability sampling, simple random sampling, then systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, and another one is multi-stage sampling. So initially, additional respondents are obtained from information provided by the initial respondents. So first you have to ask one, initially select, then the second one, then third one, then the fourth one. Accordingly, you have to collect the information. But immediately group wise, you have to, if you are to ask the questions, maybe these questions answer may be not differ from person to person. But if you are individually, if you are collecting the information through the qualitative method, not the quantitative. So at the time, what happened? Individually, you have to ask the question to the student, to the respondents, and you collect the information. This type of techniques is called their snowball sampling techniques. Then we will discuss about the probability sampling. This probability sampling is very, very important in every researchers because what happened? And this is generally a quantitative nature. So generally what happened in where you are using the probability sampling. So generally in a probability sampling, what happened? The 5 techniques we are using. One is simple random sampling, one is stratified sampling, one is systematic sampling, one is cluster sampling, and multi-stage sampling. Simple random sampling is very easy, very simple procedure. Randomly you have to select the students. Suppose that. So when you are doing your research work regarding the quality education of your develop the quality education of the organization. So at that time, how to select the simple random sampling? Now you have to go to the college, you take the permission, and after that you go to the classroom and you select one students and you collect the information. Because each the classes, 3 types of students are available. One is higher level, one is middle level, one is lower level. Suppose you have to select the 10 students. Yes or no? So first you have to find out that who those students are securing more than 90% mark. So you sit that side. Those students are securing 70 to 90% marks. You sit middle side, and those are securing 60 to 70% mark. You sit left side. So after that, what happened? You select as per your requirement. You select randomly select anyone. There is no required for the the mention the name. You select randomly one and you collect the information. And this is called the simple random sampling techniques. In definition is given a sampling procedure that ensures that each element in the population will have an equal chance to being included in the sampling. Yes or no? Suppose up to 90 to 100, more than 90 marks, 10 students are available. So when you are collecting the students or you are collect the information from the students, to anyone you can collect the students. Who is good, who is bad, we cannot say. Our aim is that those are securing 90% marks means they are very good students. Anyone or any 2 or any 3, we have to collect the information. And randomly what happened? Suppose A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I, J, K, A. Yes or no? Suppose 10 students are there. You can call A or B or C or K like this. So randomly you can select either 1 or 2 or 3 as per requirement of your, as per design of your questionnaire or design of your research. You collect, you call them and you collect the information. Then second one is systematic sample. In systematic sample, what happened? Now in this systematic sample, we have to collect the information. If you are randomly, then problem is that what happened? Now how can you know that in simple random sampling or randomly if you are choosing the students, maybe some good students, very good students, maybe we are lacking. So for that cases, what? How can you select the students? But how can you collect the information? So for that cases, after that process, systematic process, then also we can use is better techniques. This is called the systematic sampling. This is a simple process. Every nth name from the list will be drawn. So that means what happens? Now, for example, I am giving to your placement. So when the organization or the company, they are coming to take the students from your organization. So how can they select the students? So that time what happened? Now they are using systematic sampling. In a systematic sampling, what happened? Now they have to collect the information from the students in this way. Which way? Now that is first. They have to take the information there. How many students are securing more than 70% marks? Sometimes placement they are coming off campus or sometimes they are coming on campus. If off campus what happen? Now they have to circulate all the information to each the organization that those students are securing more than 70% marks, they are eligible to share the in your placement. So first you will find out that how many students they are securing 70% marks. So those are 70% securing 70% marks. So they will go for the registration. So after registration, what happen? Now first they will go for the one written test. So in a written test, if the student, those students are securing more than 75% marks out of 100 marks, they are selected for the next round. So that means what happened? Now those students are securing 70% marks. After that, they will go for the examination. So if your examination they are securing 75% marks, then they are eligible for the group discussion. So that means another process is there. Then third process is group discussion. So out of 10, suppose that each group, they are because they are designed. What? How to select the students? That design means now every group out of 10, so we have to select three students. Those are good. So out of students, those are 10 and 3 students, or sometimes they will take 4 students, or good students are in each a group, then they will take the more students also. So if they are selecting three groups, or suppose 20 groups are there, so they are selecting 60 students. Okay. After group discussion, then what happened? They are going for the final round discussion. In a final discussion, their aim is that now we have to select out of 10 students, out of 60 students, so we have to select 20 students. Yes or no? So after 20 students final discussion, then another what is? Then HR round. Final round is HR round. And HR round they have to select out of 20, only 5 students, 4:1 ratio. That is a ratio. They have to select the students. In these cases also we have to use the systematic sampling cases. Or this is the one type of systematic sampling they are implementing for the recruitment cases. Suppose for your quality education cases, how to develop the quality education. So at that time, what happened? You have to select the systematic sampling. How to select the systematic sampling? The example 2. So in here, what happened? Now first we have to find out that our target audience are one is student, one is faculty, one is head of the institution, principal or director. So if you are selecting 10 schools or 10 B school in the Cuttack Bhubaneswar city, and you are going to collect the sample data collection. So from this data collection, what is the systematic sampling you are using? So when you are visiting each institute to collect the data, first you have to collect the information that how many students are securing 90 to 100% marks. Suppose 10 students. So in the 10 students, whatever 1 to 10 students are there. So we have to select first 1, 2, 3, 4. Similarly, the middle class students, that is, those are securing 70 to 90% marks. Categorize it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have to collect the data. Similarly, the average cases 60 to 70. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are securing highest mark 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, 5. And another 3 students we have to collect the information. And similarly, in the professional level, you have to find out that how many professors are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now first 1, 2, 3 you have to collect the information. So in this process, what happens? If you are collecting all the institute, you are implementing or using the same procedure. So this is the systematic sampling you are using. Okay. This is another one. Suppose another example, third example there. Now we have to collect the information from the state of Odisha. The what should be the death rate and birth rate of last 10 years? Or you can say census data. You have to collect the information. Then how can you collect the information? So at that case, what happened? Now we have to use the sampling techniques. What is sampling? Now what is the sampling frame? What is the sampling unit like this? So after that, first you have to select the total number of that is district in the state 30. So each 30, how many blocks you find out? In whole block, how many panchayat is there? So each panchayat, how many schools are there? So you give the information that every school, you call the peoples there and you collect the information. Or you can directly visit each household in each panchayat and you collect the information. But which one is easy to you? Of which one is easy for your research work? So you have time frame should be support for you or not. So accordingly, you have to collect the information. You can directly go to the household, each household, and you collect the information. This is one systematic plan. Or you can go for one panchayat level school, and each school you call the people, all households, and you collect the information. This is one technique. Systematic maybe this one. And if you are using each block, and you call the peoples, and you go for the data collection, this is also systematic. So that means what happens? This is the nature of your research work. So when you are using in your sampling techniques, which type of sampling techniques you are using, then you have to collect the information. So this simple certified systematic sampling is very, very important after that simple random sampling. Yes or no? Then another is stratified sampling. So stratified sampling is more, that is what is systematic than other two sampling. In stratified sampling, what happened? Now probability, this is a probability sample, and sub samples are drawn within different strata. Each stratum is more or less equal to some characteristics. Do not confuse with quarter sample. We are not using quarter sample in here. Quarter sample is a subgroup or subsamples are not, yes or no. But in here, when you are using, this is a qualitative, this is a quantitative. So don't confuse the quarter samples. So in here, what happened? Now each probability sample or probability sampling cases, first we go for the subgroups. Subgroups means what? Suppose in your panchayat level or your district level, how many blocks are there? From how many blocks you have to collect the information? Each block, yes or no? How many units should be there? How many panchayat you have to select to collect the information? Each panchayat you have to collect the information, or how many panchayat you have to collect the information? Because if you are selecting all the panchayat, this is not a problem for you, because all the that is households, they will come easily. But each panchayat, again school, how many schools are available? Suppose in each panchayat there are 10 schools are available. We are calling the all the households in each schools, either your ward basis or in your village basis. So we have to call the information, because every panchayat, so many more than schools are there. EP school, ME school, high school, like this, or college, you can say that. So many schools are there, because what happened? Now spaces are there, and all the households or all the audience, they will come easily to the schools and you call the information. Or better is that now if you subgroups, this is one group, this is one group, this is one group. Now this ward number 1 or number 2, ward number 3, we have to visit it, and ward number 1, ward number 2, ward number 3, you call this school. 4, 5, 6 ward, we call that school or their school. Then what happened? This is a subsamples. Easily you can collect the information. That particularly what happened? Now this is called the stratified sampling method. We are using each group or subgroup, we can call strata. So that is ward number 1, ward number 2, and ward number 3. This is one subsample, or you can say one strata. Yes or no? And ward number 3, ward number 4, ward number 5. This is one strata. And sometimes also in probability stacking, this strata is called one cluster. Cluster means this is, again you can say that this is a clustering sample. You are getting my point or not? Now, sometime if divided, that means what happen? Now, suppose cluster means what happen? Now, suppose you have to collect in this panchayat level data collection. So first you clustering it. The clustering means what? This data. Some data you can. This is a cluster. Suppose this panchayat for panchayat is one cluster. This for panchayat is another cluster. This for panchayat is another cluster. So each clustering sample. Again you are using some strata. Each clustering means for panchayat is one cluster means how many in panchayat how many villages are available. In how many villages, all the villages, how many that is wards are available. Suppose that if your each ward you have to call one places or any school and you collect the information. That means your aim in here in your sampling techniques, the in which way we have to distribute it or the techniques we are using, then easily we can collect the information and more clustering or more clustering that. Suppose five panchayat we are taking there, this is one cluster. Then again each panchayat again we can take this is one cluster. This is called the multi-stage sampling. This is called the multi-stage sampling. That means what happens? Now in this sampling, if your strata is more, then we can go for the cluster. If cluster is more, then you can go for the more cluster. That means next question, the next technique is cluster sampling. The purpose of cluster sampling is to sample economically while retaining the characteristic of probability sample. The primary sampling unit is no longer the individual elements in the population. The primary sampling unit is larger cluster of elements and located to proximity of one another. That means in here what happen? Now sometimes stratified sampling is not applicable or it is not convenient to collect the data. That means some lacking is there. Then at that time we have to use the cluster sampling. Cluster sampling means suppose that's some example I am giving. Then suppose within the period of 2 years, we have to collect the information that in the state of Odisha, what should be the birth rate and death rate. It will be increases or decreases. So at the time you have to find out that out of in the state of Odisha, there are 30 districts are there. So each district suppose that this is one cluster. That means what? At district wise you have to collect the data. So how can you start your data collection? So first you go for block wise or panchayat level or any other level, village level. Sometimes also what happen? Now panchayat level in each block. So one panchayat is one cluster. One panchayat is one cluster. In a panchayat level, how many villages are there? How many wards are there? What should be the population size? Who are the target audience? To whom we have to collect the information? From where to collect the information? Household means what happen? Now one person who is the that is a man in the family. You can call them to the places or in the school or anywhere, and you collect the information. Yes or no? So in this case, what happen? Now we have to prepare your this is research design accordingly. You have to collect the information like this. So what happen in here? Now if the cluster, one cluster, two cluster, three cluster, if you cluster you are that is more clusters is there, then what happen in that cases you have to go for multi-stage sampling. Multi-stage sampling means what happen? Now suppose in village level, there is so many wards are there. Ward number 1, ward number 2, ward number 3, ward number 4, like this. So in this ward number cases, so this is more people, populations are there. So in panchayat level, when you are collecting the information, it is very difficult to collect the information. So you do one thing. So ward wise you have to collect the information. So if ward wise you want to go for the data collection, then you have to select one places. Either call all the householder, one person is there, or directly you can visit the households and you collect the information. So this is depending on your if cluster is more clusters is there, then this is called the multi-stage samplings. More than one cluster sampling is called multi-stage samplings. So if the multi-stage sampling is available in that cases, so we can use this. You can use these techniques. So now question is that if these are the techniques, what are now these probability sampling techniques, non-probability sampling techniques, if you are using, it is very, very important to data collection, for the data collection, then actually what we are using this are, how can we use, but how can we use the appropriate sampling design, but how can we implement the appropriate sampling design. So for that cases what happen, now we have to find out the various level. We have to design your sample first. That means what happen, now first one is that from where you have to collect the information, Accordingly, you have to design your sample. So degree of accuracy is very, very important. But how can we use, but which techniques we are using, then our sample should be accurate. Otherwise, you have to facing the difficulties to collect the data. Then, who are the resources? Then, what's your time is should be required? Time frame is very, very important. Time is required, costing is required also, because what happen now when you are going for data collection, but where you are using the data collection techniques, and when you are going for the data collection, so at that time so many parameters are there. As per the parameters, you have to collect the information. If your parameters you are not using the parameters, then you are facing the difficulties to collect the right information, and is facing the difficulties to implementing the right techniques, sampling techniques. This is very, very important. Sometimes what happen, the errors will be there. If your sampling techniques is not properly, then automatically what happen, your data collection method is wrong, and maybe sometime it is errors will become. This is called sampling error. Errors will become. That means you are not you are not implementing the right sampling techniques to collect the data. So for that cases, what happen? That what should we, how to, what is the degree of accuracy? That means when we are collecting data, how should it is accurate? Suppose I am given one example, that is to collect the data from the students or institute, how to develop the quality education of the every colleges or B school. So at that time, what happened? You have to collect the information from the students. So which students are particularly suitable to collect the accurate data? If you are A category student data, if you are asking to C category student data, then that will be different or not. That means what happened? Now first you have to find out that who are the actual the target audience. Yes or no? So and the advanced knowledge of the population. So population means what happens? Suppose in your household you want to go, you are calling the information one household, and if you are calling one person from the each house, they are unable to that is given the questions answer, or data is not available with them. Then what problem is facing that? And this is not accurate. So that means problem is that what happened? Now accordingly, who are the target audience in each household? The who is the guardian? Guardian of the institute, guardian of the household should be required to collect the information. Yes or no? Suppose you are one household, and you ask the question to the guardian, not guardian is not available, his son is available. You ask them, but he is not given the right answer. So for that cases, what happen? The design, appropriate design should be required. So we have to collect the information only the guardian of each household. Yes or no? Not the other person should be there. If you are collecting the other person, if you ask the questions, maybe sometime they are unable to answer your all the questions. So that means if you are not unable to answer your all the questions, that means your error should be there. Sometimes what happens, you can there the sampling error is there because you are not implementing the proper technique as per your requirement or as per your research. So for that cases, what happen? Now some problem we are facing in the period of data collection. So that means what happen? If your information is wrong, then what happen? Your analysis is wrong. We need this data for your analysis. So after that, what happen? We are using the statistical analysis. If our statistical analysis is wrong, but it is not given the right answer, that means some error is there. Sometimes we can say that in statistical standard error is there, or in sampling we can say the sampling error is there. So for that cases, what happen? Now, if you are using your sampling design, or if you are using your sampling technique for research work, in particular, what happen? Your proper design should be there. So that's why what is the appropriate sampling design is there. So again, I am remembering this one. First one is the accuracy level should be high. In proper information from where you want to collect. Second is resources are available or not. This is very, very important. Then time should be sufficient or not, or time should be available or not for data collection. This is very, very important. And those data we are collecting from the respondent, these are the right respondent and knowledgeable or not. This is required. Then why we are taking, why you are maintaining these parameters? Now, if you are maintaining this parameter, then our statistical analysis should be correct. That means that for the Hertzian analysis, we need the proper parameter. Otherwise, your data is invalid. Sometimes you have to manipulate the data. If you are manipulating your data, your resource analysis should be wrong. So for that cases what happen? Now when you are designing your sample or techniques you are using for data collection sampling techniques, so it should be appropriate. If not appropriate, your entire process may be wrong. Then selection of sample. That means selection of sample design. That means what happen? Now determine sample size, select the actual sample units and conduct fieldwork. So generally what happen? This sample design or sampling techniques generally you are using when you conduct the fieldwork or you conduct the research work. Maybe educational research, social research, many research you can use. So selection of sample design is important is that what happen? Now before you design your research work, so we need the sample size. Sample size is how many? What is your sample size? Now we have to calculate this one. That means this is called determine the sample size. Sample size is depending on your population. Whether population is more or less. Population is known or unknown. So if your population is high, then at that time what happen? You want to collect the information from the population. From the population, what are the numbers? This number is called the sample size. I will give one example, that is, suppose in your classroom. In your classroom, you have the 120 students. Section A 60, section B 60. So in this 60, you have to collect the 30 students. If 30 students, how can you collect the 30 students? Your sample is 30 students. Suppose your research design should say that now we have to collect 30 samples out of 120 students. What is samples? Now we have to collect the information that what is the average height of the students in the particular section A and section B. So that means what happened? Now you have to collect the information that the each section A is and section B, the total number of students is 120. So we have to randomly select the 30 students from section A and section B and you collect the information. That means what happened? Now you call 120 students and you randomly select and collect the information or call the 1 students. 30 students you take it and you collect the information and you come. If you want to use some other techniques, no. Each section we have to collect 15 students. That means section A you can call 15 students. Section B also you can call the 15 students. Which 15 students? Either you are selecting the students or randomly you can select students. Either you are using the simple random sum techniques or you can use the stratified samplings. Yes or no? So this is depending on your samplings. That means what happens? Now, in particular situation, in particular research work, what type of data and which techniques you are using to collect the data. This is very, very important. And if you know, suppose another example is that no, we are not taking like this. We have to collect the information from section A, section B, 50% girls students and 50% boys students. Then again, your methodology should be changed. In section A, how many girls students, how many boys students are available? In section B, how many girls students, how many boys students are available? So that means from section A, how many girls students we have to collect the information from how many girls students, and from section B, how many girls students we have to collect the information. So that means this is depending your entire the sample design process. So in this sample design process, you have to use that. Which technique we have to use to collect the data? What is the sample? How can you collect the samples from the as per the requirement of your research work and from the particular situation? Then this sample design is very, very important. Among all the research work, fieldwork survey is very, very important. In your fieldwork survey, if your sample design is not proper, then maybe you are facing the difficulties. the why facing the difficulties. Now, for example, that in suppose you think about your questionnaire design. So when you prepare the questionnaire, if you are preparing the questionnaire, sometime what happen, if you want to collect the information from the fieldwork level, you have to go to the target audience and you collect the information and come back. So at that time, proper sample design is required. Sample design means what happen? Now, which sample design is required? Suppose you want to go to the collect the information, and that is what is the death rate and birth rate of the state of Odisha. We have to collect this information. So when you are going for any panchayat level, you are putting your questionnaire or not? If the questionnaire at that time what happened? Now properly, if you are not designing your sample in panchayat level, how can you collect the information? Either you visit individual households or call them to the particular places and to collect the information. So this is very very important when you are designing your sample. But what is now how when you prepare your sample size, then how can you collect the so this is called the what is the appropriate sample design we are implementing in our research work. So this is entire year. This is your entire year. What is the sampling techniques? Again, I am discussing these two techniques very very important. This is called the probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Another one is non-probability sampling. This non-probability sampling is very very important when in qualitative samples. In qualitative analysis, quantitative that is techniques cases, qualitative techniques cases, generally we are using a non-probability sampling. There also we are using the probability sampling, not an issue. But generally what happen in non-probability sampling, generally we are using and we are more focusing on these two, convenience sampling as judgment sampling. What are some sample sampling? Very little bit we are using this technique. This is not very important. But important technique is in a non-probability sampling is one is convenience, one is judgment. And sometimes what happen, convenience and judgment sampling is not even the proper information. So for that cases what happen, we are using the probability sampling and this is generally what happen, the quantitatively we can use this one and this is called simple random sampling, static systematic sampling, stratified cluster sampling and multi sampling. Cluster sampling, multi sampling nearer to same like this same situation. But very very important is simple random sampling, systematic sampling and stratified sampling. These three sampling is very very important. Generally, the researchers they are using this one. And sometimes, some cases, some educational cases, when you are preparing the educational research or you can SIP or you can internship or you can say live project or sometime your educational research paper, publishing paper, preparing paper or your PhD research. So at that time, what happened? At that time, we are using the probability sampling, but we are using the random sampling and systematic sampling. But in these two sampling also we are using this convenience and judgment sampling. Why? You can ask the question, sir, how we are using this one? Yes. So when you are going for by implementing the probability sampling at that time also we are using this convenience and judgment sampling. Why? Without convenience and judgment sampling, you are unable to collect the data. So that's why what happened. Unless in many times, if you are to using the probability sampling, also you are using the these two sampling, convenience sampling, judgment sampling, and these two sampling is very very important. Everywhere you can use this sampling. So today is that much. Next class we'll go for your next session. So thank you.